Hello everyone, back to today's first video, doing the GWV Sunday Round-Up. For today's first video, we're going to have your usual eclectic mix of this and that for your Sunday lunchtime and afternoon viewing pleasure. So we're going to bring you up to date with all the latest in terms of snow that's happening with the Beast from the East right now. Beast from the East Part 2, of course, is well and truly with us. Been quite a bit of snow overnight. The snow is now congregated down to the west and the southwest of the country, although east areas are still at risk of snow showers for the rest of today. I'll bring you up to date with that. We're going to review our analogues for March, because this March has been flagged up for quite a long time actually within our analogues. So I've had James go back over the analogues that we came up with for the winter forecast actually, and we didn't include the analogue for March in the winter forecast, because obviously March is the start of spring, so it wasn't really relevant to the winter forecast itself. But this March was always flagging up right way back in the autumn. It was flagging up as potentially a cold month. So we'll review all the analogues and show you that what's happening was really to be expected. And of course we'll bring you up to date with what's happening with the solar tracker, solar activity, see what's going on in the oceans, and you'll be able to have a look at weather for next week's 10 days as well. So a lot to cram in today. You've been sharing your snow pictures on our social media feed, and also emailing Mum, and also you've been posting them in the comment box at GWV. Haven't got time to feature those pictures in this video because there's so much to discuss for this video. I'll try to bring you some of those snow pictures tomorrow. Just to say that later on today, we're going to have a look at Easter. We'll do our first update for Easter 2018. That'll be coming up this evening on a specific page just for Easter update. So that'll be coming up with you later on today, because Easter is now within the time frame of the long-range GFS model. Right, so I think better get it all underway, and we're going to start off by having a look at the latest observations. So this is how things are looking at the moment at XC Weather. You can find a link to XC Weather on the links page. You can see where the winds are coming from via the winged arrows here. They are well and truly from the east, and some pretty strong winds as well there. When you get those red arrows turning up, that's telling you you've got some pretty strong gusty winds going on, so a bitterly cold wind. And look at this, temperatures still widely at or below freezing across the UK right now. Interestingly, the far north and northeast of Scotland is above freezing. So Aberdeen, for example, is at 2 degrees, and Wick is at 2 degrees. Go further south to Strathallan, and it's freezing. Then coming further south of that to Warcop, temperatures there just -2. Let's go a bit further south to the East Midlands, temperatures -4. Further south, back to Benson, Oxfordshire, very famous Frost Hollow, temperatures at freezing there. And coming further south to Boscombe Down, temperatures are at freezing there. St Catherine Point, temperatures just struggling above freezing. Shoreham Airport is at freezing. Go down into the southwest, Exeter Airport is at freezing a bit further south. Back to Newquay, temperatures there hovering around freezing as well. And then we go down into the Scilly Isles, and temperatures are just a little bit above freezing there. But obviously it is bitterly cold across many parts of the country right now. Temperatures at or below freezing at 10:35 in the morning, and temperatures are only going to get a little bit above freezing at best today. So some places will keep those temperatures around freezing all day. Some places will struggle a little bit above freezing, but it is certainly going to be another very cold day from Beast from the East Part 2. So this is the latest radar picture from the Weather Outlook. We've got two distinct areas of snow. We've got this area of snow up here across northeastern England and eastern Scotland, so really stretching out from around Leeds and going up towards Dundee, that sort of area, getting quite a lot of snow there. Also got this band of snow that moved across England and Wales overnight, gave me around 5-6 centimetres last night. That is now through Wales and down into southwestern parts of England. That's producing quite a bit of heavy snow as well. Also moving in towards Ireland. I know we do have quite a few people watching from the Republic of Ireland, and yeah, you got some snow there again around the Dublin area and heading over towards the Irish Sea. At the moment in the very far southwest it is mainly dry, but this snow will push across into the southwest through the course of this afternoon. And even in the very, very far southwest, so talking about the sort of Cornwall, that sort of area, wouldn't be at all surprised if we didn't see some snow this afternoon. May turn to rain or sleet around coast and at low levels, but certainly high up, I think there will be quite a dump of snow down in the southwest through the course of the day. In fact, it is already producing quite a dump of snow across Wales and these more inland parts of southwestern England, also just about into southwest Midlands still as well. This is how the high-resolution HALAM model is forecasting things to develop at meteoseal.fr. You can find a link to all of the websites, including this video, on the links page. I think HALAM has been one of the better models for this spell of weather, as it was for the first beast from the east, interestingly. So this is definitely one that we should keep an eye on when we're trying to forecast snow. So this is the latest. We've got the snow in the southwest, of course, and then we've got those snow showers merging to give more longer spells of snow across parts of northern England and up into eastern and southeastern Scotland as well. Let's see what happens through the morning. So this takes us to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The snow in the west continues to push westward, so into South Wales, and you'll notice into the very, very far southwest of England by 2 o'clock. And it is snow, even down to Cornwall, being predicted there, which is really quite unusual. Could be rain around the coast, but it looks like even to the very far southwest, there's going to be quite a bit of snow through the course of this afternoon, if HALAM is right. That snow lingers on through the course of the afternoon in the southwest. Notice more snow showers are starting to move into the east. That's a little bit of a change compared to what we had yesterday. So although at the moment through the Midlands, which is eastern England, it's mostly dry, we may start to get a few more snow showers moving in from the east through the course of this afternoon. And then we go into this evening and we find that the snow in the southwest gradually starts to peter out. A little bit more snow running along the south coast up to midnight, you'll notice. So maybe another little dose of snow pushing across south. Much of that is light, but there could be more snow for southern counties this evening. Overnight, most of the snow begins to die out and it'll turn very cold and frosty. I think we'll have quite a severe frost over snow cover coming up tonight. And then we go through into tomorrow, and even in the morning there may still be a few more snow flurries along the south coast before they gradually start to die out. And then we start to find a few wintry showers coming down the east coast, but those are mainly of rain by the time we get through to Tuesday. So we are going to see an end to this cold weather very shortly. We'll be lifting out of the freezer by the time we go through to Tuesday. Certainly things will be going back to normal, but for the rest of today, more disruptive snow is possible. Do check out the severe weather warnings from the UK Met Office if you're at all worried about the snow and about your safety. You've got to travel, for example. Do have a look and see what the latest warnings are. I think generally the idea is that you shouldn't be travelling today, but have a look at the severe weather warnings from UK Met Office and see what they're showing. This is the latest Central England temperature from Hadley. Just have a quick look to see if it's updated yet. So no, it hasn't. So this is provisional up to Friday, 16th. And at that point, we had almost unravelled that very cold first half to March that we had. So the CET up to the 16th was standing at 4.8 degrees. An anomaly of just 0.4 degrees below average. So still a bit below average, but you'll remember for the first day of March, we actually had an anomaly of 8 degrees below average on that phenomenally cold opening day of March 2018. So almost unravelled all of that cold anomaly. But of course now we're going to find that starts to drop again because we are firmly back into cold weather. So we almost got back to average, but that may be as high as the CET gets this month, and it may actually be that this starts to drop over the, well, it definitely will start to drop over the next few days. The question will be how much it drops and whether we can start to lift it back up again before month's end. But I think we can say quite definitively that this is going to be a colder than average March. The question is just going to be how cold is it going to be. It was expected to be a colder than average March. So this is the analogue that we came up with for March when we did the winter forecast at the end of November. Now, we didn't show you this. At least I don't think we showed you this when we did the winter forecast at the start of December. But just for our own interest, really, we did carry it through into March. And based on our methodology that we used for the winter forecast, remember, throughout the autumn we did the winter updates. We started at the beginning of September, we went through to the end of November with those winter updates, and then we brought it all together for the winter forecast. And this is how the analogues based on that methodology looked for March back at the end of November when we produced the final sort of analogues for the winter forecast. And it was expected to be a blocked and a cold month. So the analogue picks out a large area of above average heights over Greenland, and then a big area of below average heights underneath it through the Atlantic going into Europe, with a southerly tracking jet stream as well. The blocking will pull down cold air from the north into that trough, and so very clearly a signal for a cold month and a blocked month in March. I can actually show you how the analogue, how the reanalysis, I should say, looks for March up to the middle of the month. So this is up to the 14th of March, and it's remarkably similar so far to the analogue that we came up with for March when we did the winter forecast. So again, there's the large blocking feature that we've got up over Greenland. There's the area of below average heights underneath it. Basically, it's very, very similar in terms of the reanalysis so far for March 2018 compared to the analogue that we came up with for March 2018. So, I mean, we always expected this March to be quite a cold month. The analogues were clearly picking that out. And we just see the evidence of it in the reanalysis for March so far. That may change a little bit over the next couple of weeks. We've got the second half of March to go, of course. But it won't, I don't think it'll change all that dramatically. So I suspect when we get to the end of March, our analogue that we produced for March when we did winter forecast will still be holding up quite well. Now, a lot of things were pointing to a cold March as well. So when we came up with the analogues for the spring forecast, we looked at various things. For example, we looked at Marches that follow cold Februaries. This is the analogue for Marches that follow cold Februaries with CETs between 2 and 3 degrees. Again, this was very clearly pinpointing a cold and blocked month, so below average heights to our south, above average heights around Greenland, very much signal for blocking and a cold month. And if we look at, we also looked at Marches that follow Februaries with CETs between 3 and 4 degrees, and again that looks very, very similar to the March we've got going on at the moment, with the blocking around Greenland, below average heights underneath it, looking like that. And then also, if we look, we looked at Marches that follow cold Februaries but milder Januaries. That also had quite a blocking signal around Greenland as well. Through the spring updates, we looked at Marches that were 2 years away from solar minimum. Again, that was very strong signal for blocking to be around Greenland and the below average heights underneath it. So pretty much everything we've been looking at over the past few months, everything really has been pointing towards quite a cold, quite a blocked March. And even ENSO has been looking at has been pointing towards quite a cold and quite a blocked March. This is how the analogue looks for Marches that are going from La Nina. We've had a La Nina, or we had a La Nina through the winter, to back to ENSO neutral. And again, that one has not quite as strong a blocking signal, but above average heights certainly being signalled to the north, below average heights to the south, probably quite a signal for easterlies. So more or less everything we've been looking at over the past few months has been pointing towards quite a cold and quite a blocked March. But I think the analogue that we came up with when we did the winter forecast, which was that one, and annoyingly we didn't include that in the winter forecast because March is outside the winter time frame, so it wasn't really relevant. But we had that pinpointed back at the end of November, a significant risk of a colder than average March. And if you compare that analogue with how March looks so far up to the middle of the month, March 2018, up to the middle of the month, I mean, it's remarkably similar, and I think the analogues are holding up very, very well at the moment, as they have been throughout the winter, really. I think they've performed really quite well. So the cold March was expected. The saving grace is that the spring analogues did point towards April returning back to something more like a normal pattern. So spring may get underway in April if analogues continue to perform quite well. We'll have to wait and see about that. This is what's happening in the ocean, so we're going to have a look at sea surface temperature anomalies next in the Atlantic and the Pacific. This is how the sea surface temperature anomalies were looking last week, when we did last week's Sunday Roundup. Talking of ENSO, where we just finished off with the review of the analogues, that is the signature of La Nina just there through the equatorial Pacific Ocean from Peru through to Indonesia. That's how it was looking last week. Let's have a look and see how it's looking now. Perhaps a little bit surprisingly, given that we are getting further into the spring, I think that the signature has strengthened a little bit over the past week. You would be expecting now to see La Nina begin to unravel and revert back to ENSO neutral. Actually, La Nina has certainly continued over the past week. The cold events in the Pacific Ocean certainly continued over the past week. Maybe, what do we think? Maybe that's strengthened ever so slightly over the past week as well, which it shouldn't really be doing, because at this point it should be starting to fade away and go back to ENSO neutral. So it might be that we're going to keep this La Nina going through the spring. And if we get to the summer and we're still in a La Nina, it's possible this will strengthen into another sort of event as we go into the summer and then on into the second half of the year and through the winter of 2018-19. That is very speculative. Let's wait and see where we are by the time we get through to around June. I'm expecting that we will go back to ENSO neutral through this spring, because we would normally, most of the time, we do that. We go back to ENSO neutral through the spring. But let's just wait and see. It is a little bit surprising that we have, if anything, strengthened the La Nina signal over the past week. Further north in the Pacific, so we've got these cold and average sea surface temperature anomalies up here in the northeastern part of the Pacific Ocean. They haven't really changed a great deal over the past week. And then in the Atlantic, so let's just have a look at how things were looking last week in the Atlantic. That's how it was. This is how things are looking now. So I think what's happened over the past week is that we've lost some of those cold and average sea surface temperature anomalies close to Africa, which may be important as we get through into the summer. If we're going to start warming things up in the Atlantic off Africa and through the tropics, then particularly if the La Nina was to continue into the summer, it's possible we have quite an active hurricane season. So we'll be keeping an eye on that area of the Atlantic over the next few weeks. Further north, so central parts of the Atlantic, close to average, quite cool to south of Greenland, and then around the UK and down into Europe, Bay of Biscay, and then through the Med, that area just there, the sea surface temperature anomalies are really quite cold. That's all down to the pretty cold winter that we've had, and particularly down to the Beast from the East Part 1. Obviously, Beast from the East Part 2, what's going on right now, will also cool those sea surface temperature anomalies down. Bear in mind, those are very shallow waters around the UK, sort of in the North Sea, through the Channel, Bay of Biscay, off the coast of Portugal, through the Med. Those are all very shallow waters. They are prone to dramatic changes with the weather, with the temperature. So it would only take a month or two of warm or by summer hot weather to see those blue anomalies disappear completely, and we would go towards orange and red. So they are very much prone to chopping and changing as the temperature rises and falls. It's really these waters, the deeper waters in the main part of the Atlantic that, or I should say in the central part of the Atlantic, that we concentrate on in terms of perhaps influencing the weather patterns themselves. And the same is true in the Pacific. So, I mean, these areas around here, they are very shallow waters. They are prone chopping and changing. It's these waters in the deeper waters in the central body of the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans that have the power, when they change slowly over periods of time, they have the power to change the weather patterns a little bit. Right, so this is how things are looking on the solar disk on our side of this today. This is from solarhound.net. We have one very, very tiny sunspot. You have to really squint at the screen to make it out, but we have got a sunspot region just there. However, solar activity is at very low levels and remains at very low levels, certainly for today, and is expected to be staying at very low levels of solar activity at solarhound.net for the next 3 days. This is how the GWV Sunday Round-Up Solar Activity Tracker is looking. It's been sent through by James Ackrell, as always, for the Sunday Roundup. Quite dramatic developments, actually, over the past week. I want you to cast your eye down to our trend lines, which is the thick green and the thick red lines, because they have done a little bit of a plunge over the past week. So this is where they were around here, already at a very minimal level of solar activity, but kind of flatlining at that level, and have been doing so since back into the autumn. But it looks like the trends have taken another step down. So this is where they are right now. We're almost sort of at a flat level. We have almost reached the very bottom, which is along here, almost reached very bottom of the chart over the past week of the tracker. So obviously solar activity is continuing to reduce, as you would expect it to do so. We are nearing solar minimum, but we aren't yet at solar minimum. So I don't think we'll keep the trends at that sort of level for too long. I would suspect over the next few weeks they will begin to lift up a little bit for a while. But that's the kind of level we're going to get to when we get to solar minimum. We will be down at that sort of level probably for a few months, and maybe a year or so we will see the trend lines going down to that sort of level. I don't think we'll keep the trend there at the time being, because it's a little bit too early. That's the kind of thing we will see when we are at the true solar minimum. I don't think we're there yet, but it won't be too much longer. It's interesting, however, that we have gone into this very minimal level of solar activity at the same time as we're having quite a coldish spell of weather, and the wind is more definitively going into the east, certainly through the latter stages of the winter and into early spring. You can never say that one thing is leading to another, but we do know that when we have minimal levels of solar activity, we increase the risk of northern blocking. So that's one of the reasons we look at sunspot numbers and solar activity, because particularly for our side of the pole, we do know that when we get to this sort of minimal level of solar activity, we do increase the risk of winter blocking, and that's something that we've seen this winter. We will continue to observe the solar tracker over the next few weeks. This is how the Arctic Oscillation is looking. This is the observed and forecast chart from NOAA. The black line here tells us where we've been with the Arctic Oscillations. The red lines at the end, excuse me, where the GFS symbols are forecasting the Arctic Oscillation to go. So we've been up and down with the AO through most of the winter, but we had the southern stratospheric warming back around, I think it's back around the 12th of February, which produced quite a dramatic plunge in the AO at the end of February and into the start of March. We're still negative with the AO, not at that very low level, but we are still negative with the Arctic Oscillation right now. GFS ensembles are forecasting that to begin to try and lift up through the final sort of week or so of March, going back towards positive territory. Although, right at the very end, and this is taking us into the start of April, there are signs that we might begin to go negative again. So we may see a reduction of the blocking signal as we get through to the final week of March, but it's possible that by early April that blocking signal might start to come back. Remember, this is just an index that's reflecting the state of the atmosphere. It's the weather that's driving the index. So when you see the AO going from negative to positive like that, what's happening is that the blocking is relaxing, it's reducing and allowing the index to return to positive territory. But there are signals there, certainly, that the AO may go negative again before the end of the month. North Atlantic Oscillation is very similar. So again, black line tells us where we've been with the NAO. Red lines at the end where GFS ensembles forecasting the NAO to go. Through most of the winter, we was positive with the NAO up there. We had the southern stratospheric warming as the AO went negative. So too did the NAO. Both indexes went down into negative territory, telling us that we went into a very unusual and abnormal type pattern in both the Arctic and in the North Atlantic. This is where we are right now. We're still negative with the North Atlantic Oscillation. So obviously at the moment we haven't unravelled that southern stratospheric warming. We are still being affected by the SSW that occurred on the 12th of February. GFS ensembles forecasting us to gradually lift the NAO up, but only going back towards neutral. However, both the indexes are lifting up as we get through to the final week of March. So this does tell us that the atmosphere is going to try and get itself back to a more normal pattern. And as I said, our analogues were pointing to April really being the start of spring. So it is possible that the effects of the southern stratospheric warming are beginning to show signs of running out of steam, and it's possible that April will see us reverting back into a more typical sort of spring-like pattern. I know a lot of you are waiting for it, so let's wait and see whether April does indeed give us our first proper burst of spring weather. Temperature anomalies for the next week, this going from the 18th to 26th of March. They're coming out colder than average for not just the UK, but for the vast majority of Europe. So it's quite unusual to see the whole of Europe, from Ireland and Portugal in the far west over to Russia in the east, and nearly all points in between. Quite unusual to see most of Europe coming out colder than average, but that's what we're facing in the next week. Really quite a cold week ahead. This is how the precipitation anomaly is looking. You can see where the high pressure is going to be in the coming week, because much of Central Europe is significantly drier than average. To the north, far north, it's going a little bit wetter than average. Much of the Med also coming out wetter than average as well. That's because the jet stream will continue to be on quite a southerly track in the week ahead. So this is how the GFS is looking for today. We've got the easterly wind, of course, blasting across the country. It's a bitterly cold day. There's a high pressure again, just to the north east of Scotland, bringing those bitter easy winds. This is where the jet stream is at the moment. Well, you keep an eye on this, because I'm going to show you where the jet stream is as we get towards Easter. So that's where the jet stream is right now. It's well to our south in the Atlantic and going towards sort of Portugal, Spain and North Africa as well. As long as the jet stream is down at that level, way to our south, we will always be at risk of getting more cold weather. So we go through to tomorrow, still in those easterly winds, another bitterly cold day. Then the high pressure collapses down across the country through the early and middle part of next week. Cuts off the easterly wind. We will see temperatures becoming less cold, although it's going to be a bit of a struggle to warm things up. But certainly by the middle of the week, we should see the temperature going back closer to average. The end of the week is bringing more low pressure in from off the Atlantic. So it's going to be a fairly dryish week coming up until we get to around Thursday or Friday. And then we're going to find cloud and rain heading in from off the Atlantic. And then that takes us into what looks like quite an unsettled weekend next weekend with low pressure close to the country. That's where the jet stream is in a week's time. So it's coming across the Atlantic, trying to push northwards, actually. It's trying to go in that sort of direction. It's coming across the Atlantic, but then you'll notice, again, it's dipping away towards Spain and Portugal and North Africa. So this is telling us that we continue to have a trough within the 500 millibar flow in a week's time. And so this unsettled weather that we have here next weekend could also be quite chilly. Wouldn't rule out the chance of some snow up in the north anyway. Going to the extended range of the GFS, it remains very unsettled as we go into next week. We've gone up towards Good Friday now. Remember, the Easter updates will begin this evening. This is Good Friday, 30th of March. It looks unsettled, but look at that. The wind is back into the north again on this particular run of the GFS. That takes us up to Easter Sunday, where low pressure is trying to get in off the Atlantic. But look where the jet stream is. Again, this is Easter Sunday. It's virtually at the end of the GFS run, but the jet stream continues to be 2 hours south through the middle of the Atlantic and going into Spain and into Portugal as well. Now, I have got some energy from a jet stream up here, so that's why it turns a little bit less cold for a time as we run up towards Easter. But overall, it looks like the jet stream going to be remaining to our south for the rest of March anyway, which means we are likely to, at the very least, keep it quite chilly, and we will be at risk of further cold weather at times. This is the ECMWF. We've got low pressure moving in through the second half of the week, so after a drier sort of early and middle part of the week with a slow recovery in the temperature, turns unsettled at the end of the week and into next weekend. Those unsettled conditions continue into the extended range of the ECM. That's how we look by the time we get through to day 10, bringing low pressure in from off the Atlantic. High pressure is there to our southwest. This is trying to bring a spring, this area of high pressure. That's the Azores high. It's trying to bring a spring, but it looks rather sort of flabby, doesn't look definitive, and I suspect if we went on a couple more days beyond this, we would find that Azores high was to pull out there again, and we would probably start to pull winds back down from the north along with the jet stream. Finally, the GEM looks like that. So on Thursday, we're gradually turning more unsettled, then very unsettled conditions going into next weekend with showers or longer spells of rain, beginning to pull in some colder air from the north again. So certainly for Scotland, we may see some wintry weather turning up next weekend. We go up towards day 10. We get to day 10, which is Wednesday the 28th of March, and we look pretty cold still. The high pressure Azores high is to our southwest, but it's not in a position to bring us spring. We remain sort of in a northwesterly flow. And as I say, as long as that jet stream is doing what it's doing, which is continuing to be to the south of us, we will continue to have a risk of cold weather at times. So whilst the Beats from the East Part 2 is going to be moderating over the next 24 to 48 hours, and I don't think we will get things as cold as this again before next winter, we are still going to be at risk of having more cold interludes, I think, through the rest of March, and possibly even going into the beginning of April. And that, of course, covers Easter, and we will have our first Easter updates for you this evening. Right, been a very extended Sunday roundup today. There's a lot to cram in. I wanted to show you those analogues just to prove that this cold March has been in the works, kind of, right the way back in the autumn. We were seeing signals of a pretty cold March, so I wanted to show you that. And it's not really a surprise what's happened this month. The analogues, as I say, did point to spring getting going, reverting to a more typical pattern in April. So if you're waiting for spring, you possibly don't have too much longer to wait, but we will need to see the jet stream coming back to a more sort of typical, more normal pattern across the Atlantic. We will need to see the jet stream rising north before we can say that spring is truly on its way. So let's wait and see whether that happens in the early part of April. Right, come back this evening for our first update for Easter, but that's all for now, and thanks for watching.